Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of True Crime with Lux. Today I will be talking about the Lake Bodom murders. This is the biggest unsolved case in Finland. On June 4th of 1960, 4 teenagers went camping. 2 15-year-olds, Anja Tuulikki-Maki and Mali Armeli Björlund, and 2 18-year-old boys, Seppo Boisman and Nils Gustafsson. They set up their tents near the lake that day. Between 4 and 6 a.m. on June 5th, all 4 of them had been attacked by someone. They had been attacked with a knife and some kind of blunt object, possibly a rock. The only one to survive this attack was Nils, who had fractured facial bones when he was found. Around 6 a.m., a couple of bird watchers had reported seeing the collapsed tent and a blond man walking away. At 11, a carpenter called the police when he discovered the bodies. Police arrived about an hour later. The tent had been slashed and was covered in blood. Nils and Milo were on top of the tent, while Anja and Seppo were found inside of the tent. Mila had the worst injuries, and she was naked from the waist down, but no signs of sexual assault. She had been stabbed multiple times, even after she had died. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma. Seppo and Anja were also killed by blunt force trauma, but they did have a few stab wounds. It looked as if the attacker had begun stabbing through the tent. Their clothing and wallets were missing from the scene, but some were found farther away from the tent. There were tracks leading away from the tent that happened to match Nils' shoes. So either the attacker stole Nils' shoes or Nils walked away before coming back. The shoes were found about 500 yards away from the tent, hidden in some bush. Nils was taken to for medical attention and was questioned. He claimed to be in shock and couldn't remember what had happened. He did say that he saw a black-cloaked man with red eyes, but that's all that he could recall. Multiple people had seen the tent from a distance and said that they saw a blond man walking around. Police asked the public for their help and had them set up a search party to search for evidence. So they essentially had a bunch of people who did nothing of what they were supposed to be doing, trampling through this crime scene looking for evidence. Police did have a few suspects. The first one was Petri Sunninen. During the mid-1960s, he was known for his violent tendencies, and he claimed to a fellow inmate that he was responsible for the murders that occurred at Lake Bodom. However, he was about 14 years old at the time of the murders. So many people question whether he could have single-handedly overpowered 4 teenagers, casting doubt on his involvement. The next suspect was Hans Osman. Most public suspicion focused on him, a German-born, naturalized Finnish citizen who lived several kilometers from the shore of Lake Bodom. A series of books had a theory that Osman committed the Bodom killings and other murders along with it. It was not taken very seriously by the police, though, as Hans had an alibi for the night of the Bodom murders. He was said to have been in Germany during this time. However, on the morning of June 6th, he had shown up at a hospital in Helsinki with bloody clothes. He soon moved to Sweden, where he also died in the 1990s. Hans was also a suspect in 5 other cases, even confessing to one of them on his deathbed. Now, Nils was put under hypnosis to see if he could remember anything else about the attack that day, and he was able to come up with a sketch of the man that strongly resembled Hans. But still, the police didn't take it serious. The next suspect many local people suspected, who was named Karl Vladimir Gillström, a kiosk keeper from Otta known to have been hostile towards campers. Police found no hard evidence to link him to the actual murders. They were skeptical of supposed confessions he was said to have made because they considered him disturbed. He drowned in Lake Bodom in 1969, most likely taking his own life. The people in the town knew him as a violent person who would cut down tents, throw rocks at people who came to his street, and some later said that it was him they saw coming from the murder scene, but were just too afraid to call the police about it. The police never were able to recover DNA from Karl. 44 years later, in March of 2004, Nils was arrested. In early 2005, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation declared that the case was solved based on new forensic analysis. According to the prosecution's interpretation of the bloodstains, Nils had been drunk and excluded from the tent when he attacked the other boy, getting his jaw broken in a fight which escalated into him committing 3 murders. The trial started on August 4th of 2005. Nils' defense lawyer argued that the murders were the work of 1 or more people and that Nils would have been incapable of killing 3 people given the extent of his injuries. He had always been known that the shoes worn by the killer and hidden were belonging to Nils, who was barefoot when police arrived. DNA analysis was significant for the prosecution as it showed that the 3 murdered victims' blood were on the shoes, but Nils' blood wasn't. The prosecution said it followed from the lack of Nils' blood on the shoes that his injuries had occurred at a different time than the attack on the murdered victims, and that the only explanation of this was that Nils had committed the murders, then faked the theft of items by hiding them, further injured himself, and then went back to the tent where he pretended to be unconscious. The prosecution attempted to bolster their case by alleging an identification by 2 birdwatchers of Nils as the tall blonde man at the scene of the crime. It is also said that he was overheard making an incriminating remark, and also that a decade after the event, he had boasted to a woman about his guilt. On October 7th of 2005, Nils was acquitted of all charges. The court explained that the verdict was due to the prosecution's evidence being inconclusive, failure to show Nils had a motive appropriate to a crime of such extreme seriousness, and a certainty about the facts now being impossible given the time that had elapsed. The state of Finland paid him for the mental suffering caused by the long remand time, but the public prosecutor refused to sue Finnish newspapers for defamation. Nils never looked for any kind of charges against the newspaper for what they said about him during this time, and to this day, it is still unknown who committed the heinous murders at Bodom Lake. Thank you for joining me today. I know it's a really short case. There isn't a whole lot of information about it because it is from Finland and some things were translated, but I appreciate you guys listening, and I will be talking to you next week.